Daniel was the kind of man who built his empire from ashes. A self-made millionaire, known for his charm and ruthless ambition. But long before the world called him Sir, there was Maya, the woman who believed in him when he was nothing more than a dreamer with unpaid bills and sleepless nights. She cooked for him, prayed for him, held him when failure broke his spirit. They shared a one-room apartment where laughter and struggle lived side by side. To the world, she was ordinary. To him, once upon a time, she was everything, but success changes people. Slowly. Quietly. First, it starts with late-night calls. Then missed dinners. Then excuses. The man who once wrote love letters began sending money transfers instead. Maya noticed the change, not overnight, but through the silence that grew between them. And one day, that silence broke not with words, but headlines: millionaire entrepreneur seen with supermodel Aria Lane. The photos spread like wildfire. Daniel and Aria, dazzling, beautiful, the new power couple. The internet adored them. Maya watched the world celebrate the man who had once promised her forever. She didn't scream. She didn't chase. She simply packed her things and walked out of the mansion that her sacrifices had built. Her friends told her to fight. To demand her share, her justice. But Maya wasn't interested in revenge or pity. She left quietly, the way people leave when their soul is tired. Daniel, meanwhile, lived the dream. Flashbulbs, champagne, magazine covers. Aria was everything Maya wasn't: glamorous, unpredictable, desired. For a while, he believed he was happy. He threw lavish parties, bought villas by the sea, surrounded himself with people who laughed too loudly and stayed too briefly, but fame is a fragile friend. When the novelty fades, the emptiness returns, dressed in designer clothes. Aria was beautiful, yes, but her love was like smoke, impossible to hold. She loved the spotlight more than the man beside her. And Daniel, blinded by ego, ignored every sign. Years passed. Maya built a quiet life. She worked at a charity, helping women rebuild their lives after betrayal and loss. Her kindness drew people toward her. She smiled more, spoke less, and carried her scars like medals. Somewhere inside, she had found peace, or something close to it, until one morning, a letter arrived. Thick envelope. Gold seal. Her name printed in elegant script: "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Daniel Reed and Aria Lane." For a moment, the world went still. She held that letter as if it burned. Not because she still loved him, but because it reminded her of everything she had survived. Most people would have thrown it away. But not Maya. She wasn't the same woman who once cried herself to sleep. She was different now, stronger, quieter, untouchable. She took a deep breath and smiled. "Let's go see how fairy tales end," she whispered. The wedding day arrived like a scene from a movie. Cameras flashed, the venue sparkled with white roses and crystal chandeliers. The press called it the wedding of the decade. Aria glided through the crowd like a goddess, every move rehearsed, every smile for the cameras. Daniel looked like the man who had won the world. No one noticed the sleek black limousine that stopped just beyond the entrance. The chauffeur opened the door, and out stepped Maya. Elegant. Composed. Dressed in a gown the color of calm storm clouds, subtle, graceful, commanding. She walked slowly, each step measured, as if she were walking not into a wedding but into a reckoning. The guests turned. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Some recognized her instantly, the woman he left behind. The one who had disappeared without a word. Daniel froze, his smile faltering as memories slammed into him all at once: the laughter, the hunger, the promises whispered in the dark. He hadn't seen her in years, but the moment he did, the facade cracked. Maya's presence wasn't loud. She didn't make a scene. She simply existed, and that was enough to silence a room filled with diamonds and secrets. Aria glanced at Daniel, her expression unreadable. The cameras, sensing drama, began to focus. The host stammered something, but Maya raised a hand gently. "Relax," she said softly, her voice calm, almost kind. "I didn't come to stop the wedding. Her tone carried no bitterness, only a quiet strength that unsettled everyone. She walked closer, stopping just a few feet from Daniel. For a second, time folded, years of love, betrayal, and silence compressed into that single moment. "Congratulations," she said, offering him a small smile. "You finally got the life you wanted." Daniel's throat tightened. He tried to respond, but words refused to form. The crowd watched, holding their breath. Arya crossed her arms, visibly uncomfortable. The cameras clicked furiously, sensing a story bigger than the ceremony itself. Maya continued, her voice even, her eyes unflinching. "When you left, I thought I lost everything. But sometimes losing someone is how you find yourself." She looked around, her gaze sweeping over the glittering guests. "I came here today not to remind you of the past, but to thank you. Because of you, I learned how to stand on my own feet. I learned that love without respect is just loneliness dressed up as romance." The audience shifted uneasily. Even Arya's confident posture faltered for a moment. Daniel whispered, "Maya, but she raised a hand gently. "No need," she said softly. "We've both moved on. You have your world now, and I have mine. I only hope this time, you choose to cherish what's real, before it slips away again." Her words hung in the air like music no one could ignore. Then she turned to leave, her head high, her step steady, but just as she reached the exit, a sudden sound, a chair scraping, a voice calling her name. He followed her out, leaving behind confused guests and a furious bride. Outside, under the soft drizzle, he caught up. "Why did you come?" he asked, his voice cracking. Maya looked at him, her expression unreadable. "To let go," she said simply. "Completely." Daniel's face twisted between regret and realization. "I thought you hated me." She smiled sadly. "I did. But hate fades. You stop carrying the people who let you fall. One day, you just wake up and they're not heavy anymore." The rain began to fall harder, blurring the lights behind them. For a brief moment, Daniel saw the woman he once loved, not the heartbroken girl, but a woman who had rebuilt herself from ashes. "I was stupid," he whispered. "You were young," she replied. "We both were. But you taught me something important: love should never make you feel small." Then, without another word, she stepped into the limousine. The driver closed the door gently, and the car pulled away. Daniel stood in the rain, watching the tail lights fade into the distance, a quiet punishment for all the noise he had once created. Inside the car, Maya leaned back, exhaling deeply. There were no tears, no lingering pain. Just a sense of closure, the kind that feels like freedom. She didn't need an audience to win. Her victory was silent, personal, complete. Behind her, at the grand venue, chaos unfolded. Arya stormed out, furious that her perfect wedding had been upstaged. The cameras, the guests, the whispers, all turned into a storm of gossip. But Maya was gone before any of it could touch her. Daniel eventually returned inside, drenched and shaken. The ceremony resumed, but something in him had shifted. The vows felt hollow, the applause meaningless. Every word he spoke sounded like a lie echoing back at him. He had everything he'd ever wanted, yet standing there, he felt poorer than ever. And somewhere, in a quiet limousine driving away from all the noise, Maya smiled at her reflection. Not because she had hurt him, but because she had healed herself. The rain eased, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and gray, and for the first time in years, she whispered to herself, "I'm free." Days turned into weeks, and the video of Maya's unexpected appearance at Daniel's wedding exploded online. Someone from the press had captured her words, calm, graceful, devastatingly real. Millions watched in silence as she said, "Love without respect is just loneliness dressed up as romance." The internet called her the woman who walked away. Within days, she became a symbol of quiet strength, of grace after betrayal. Maya never sought attention, but attention found her. Invitations to speak, offers to write, interviews, all poured in. For the first time, the world wanted to hear her story, not as Daniel Reed's forgotten wife, but as Maya, the woman who rebuilt herself. Daniel, on the other hand, faced a storm he wasn't prepared for. The wedding that was meant to showcase his perfect life turned into a scandalous spectacle. The headlines no longer praised him, they questioned him. Did Daniel Reed trade love for luxury? The ex-wife who stole the spotlight. Arya was furious. She accused him of orchestrating the drama for publicity. Their honeymoon plans collapsed under the weight of blame. The woman who once loved the cameras now despised the attention. Within weeks, cracks began to appear. Daniel tried to focus on work, but the world felt different now. The deals he once closed effortlessly began to slip through his fingers. His investors grew cautious. His charm no longer filled rooms. He began to see himself not as a winner, but as a man haunted by choices he couldn't undo. One night, unable to sleep, he found himself scrolling through social media. There she was, Maya, standing on a small stage, speaking at a women's seminar. Her voice was steady, her eyes bright with purpose. She spoke about strength, about walking away from people who don't value your worth, about rebuilding from nothing. Every word felt like it was meant for him. He shut his laptop, but the silence in the room was unbearable. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something unfamiliar, regret that couldn't be buried under money or fame. Weeks later, his company's stock dropped. A project failed. His marriage with Arya became public drama, accusations, jealousy, and tears for the cameras. Arya left, taking her beauty deals and media connections with her. Daniel was alone again, surrounded by luxury that suddenly looked like emptiness in disguise. Meanwhile, Maya's life bloomed. Her charity grew into a movement. People looked up to her, not for her pain, but for her grace. She wasn't rich in the traditional sense, but she was fulfilled, surrounded by people who valued her heart, not her name. One afternoon, while visiting a rehabilitation center her foundation funded, Maya met a group of young women trying to rebuild their lives. One of them handed her a note that read, "Because of you, I didn't give up." Maya smiled through tears. She realized that her pain had turned into purpose. The wound that once defined her had become her strength, but as her life ascended, Daniel's kept falling. He tried to drown his guilt in work, but success felt hollow. The empire he built was cracking, not from the outside, but from within him. One morning, he received a letter from an investor pulling out. The same day, the news broke of Arya's tell-all interview, a public confession about how their marriage was built on image, not love. His name, once synonymous with power, now trended with mockery. For days, he stayed locked in his penthouse, staring at the skyline that once represented his pride. The city hadn't changed, only he had. The silence grew unbearable, so he made a decision he'd avoided for years. He picked up his car keys and drove to the one place that once felt like home, the old apartment he and Maya had shared before success poisoned everything. The building was still there, aged but sturdy. The walls seemed to remember them. He stood outside, staring at the door they once painted blue. Memories flooded back, laughter over burnt dinners, Maya's messy handwriting on the fridge, the way she used to fall asleep reading next to him. He closed his eyes and realized what he had truly lost wasn't love. It was peace. That same week, fate crossed their paths again. Maya was invited to speak at a business summit focused on leadership and resilience, the same event Daniel's company sponsored. Neither knew the other would be there. When Maya stepped onto the stage, the audience fell silent. She spoke about failure, not as defeat, but as a teacher. She said, "Sometimes the things that break us are just the universe showing us who we truly are." Daniel sat at the back, hidden among the crowd. Each word pierced deeper than the last. He wanted to leave, but he couldn't. He was looking at the woman he once abandoned, now radiant, powerful, whole. After the event, he approached her quietly. She noticed him instantly, but instead of anger, there was calm in her eyes. He hesitated, searching for words. "You're incredible," he finally said. Maya smiled faintly. "I always was. You just couldn't see it then." He nodded, accepting the truth like a man who had finally stopped lying to himself. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I just needed to tell you. I see it now. I see you." Her gaze softened, but her voice remained steady. Forgiveness isn't for you. It's for me. And I already found it. They stood in silence for a moment. He looked smaller now, not physically, but in spirit. The arrogance that once defined him was gone, replaced by something almost fragile. I lost everything, he admitted quietly. The company, Arya, my reputation. I thought I could start over, but it's like the world is punishing me. Maya shook her head gently. It's not punishment, Daniel. It's just the truth catching up. Sometimes life takes away what doesn't serve your soul anymore. Maybe this is your chance to start again, for real this time. Her words carried no bitterness. Only compassion. That kindness broke him more than any anger ever could. He exhaled shakily. I never realized how much strength it takes to walk away. Maya looked at him, eyes kind but distant. Strength isn't about walking away. It's about knowing when not to stay. Before he could respond, someone called her name from the stage, her new team waiting for her. She gave him one last look and said softly, "Take care of yourself, Daniel." Then she turned and walked away, leaving him with silence heavy enough to echo. That night, Daniel sat in his car for a long time. The city outside felt unfamiliar, as if he'd been living in its reflection all these years. For the first time, he didn't think about money or fame. He thought about peace, the kind Maya carried wherever she went. Months passed. Daniel stepped away from the spotlight, selling his company shares, donating a portion of his wealth to foundations that supported abandoned women and single mothers, one of them being Maya's organization. He never took credit. He just wanted to do something that mattered. Maya learned about the anonymous donation but didn't ask questions. She only smiled and whispered, maybe he finally found his lesson. Life moved on quietly. She published a book, The Art of Letting Go, which became a bestseller. Her story inspired millions to find strength in heartbreak. During one of her interviews, a reporter asked, "If you could say one thing to the man who hurt you, what would it be?" She paused, smiled gently, and replied, "Thank you. Because without that pain, I would have never met myself." That clip went viral, not because of drama, but because of truth. The audience didn't see a victim, they saw a victor. A woman who rose not by revenge, but by healing. Daniel watched that interview alone, his eyes glistening with something between pride and sorrow. He finally understood that love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes it's about learning when to let go gracefully.